Greetings, everybody. Thank you for listening. This is Hear Her Sports, and I'm Elizabeth Emery. Before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. Hear Her Sports is taking off the month of August, but don't fear, there's plenty of new, inspiring conversations to listen to during that time. Last week, I launched Hear Her Sports Glenville, presented by the Cleveland YWCA for Front International. Hear Her Sports Glenville is a neighborhood stories project about the power of sports for girls and women, breaking barriers and reaching goals. Yes, Glenville is a Cleveland neighborhood, but the stories are not just about Cleveland. For example, I talked to teenagers working towards college scholarships and seniors finding community and better health at a local recreation center. I'd love it if you follow along on Instagram at Hear Her Glenville, where each day there will be a new daily quote to introduce some of the women and girls participating in the project. There are also photos and some teasers. The 20-minute episodes are available on iTunes, Spotify, and your favorite podcast player, and directly from the website hearhersportsproject.com. Of course, August is also a great time to catch up on Hear Her Sports episodes that you've missed. I still often think of Shelma Junn in episode 27, or listen to Megan Jastrob in episode 18. She has been on fire this season during a spring trip to Europe and at Junior Track Nationals, where she just won 5 titles and set a national record. Now on to this week's episode. I'm so excited to introduce Iris Slappendel, a founder of the Cyclists Alliance, a new women's cycling union. There are 2 parts to the episode because I spoke to her just as the organization launched, and then again a couple of weeks ago. It's great to hear her goals and then about successes and what they've learned over the past 6 months. This is such an important organization with very big plans. As Iris mentions, women's cycling is at a great moment right now. There are tons happening to make the sport better. As we speak, 12 women from Team Donon des Ailes au Vélo are riding the entire Tour de France route one day ahead of the professional men's peloton. They are doing that to promote the idea of a real Tour de France for women. Well, let's get going and hear more from Iris. Today's guest is Iris Slappendel, a founder and the executive director of the Cyclists Alliance. The Cyclists Alliance is a new women's cycling union. I'm so excited to talk to her about all the changes and growth in women's cycling. Welcome, Iris. It's a real honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Could you start by giving an overview of this new union and of where women's cycling is right now?
Yes, I can. So maybe start with where is women's cycling right now, because that's the reason we've created this union. So I think women's cycling is a sport that's rapidly growing in the last few years. The level raised, it's becoming more and more professional, and the teams are becoming more professional. And I think what is the best is that the races are getting really more exciting. So there is not just one racer who can win a race. There are like 10 or 20 riders who can win a race, and that makes it very exciting to watch. Like, if you're a fan of women's cycling, but if you've watched the past few years, the World Championships, for example, it's been all like really exciting races. So I think that's one of the reasons we've started the Alliance, because although it's going well, women's professional cycling, we believe, is on the verge of becoming one of the fastest growing women's sport, and also commercially lucrative. And to encourage that process, I think it's good for women to have an active part in that progress. And therefore, you need to create some way that you stand together, that you have unite your voice. And I think that's the only way to talk with other stakeholders like the teams or the UCI, the International Cycling Union, or with the race organizers about how we're gonna improve women's cycling and how the women can help and can be part of it. It's an important catalyst to push all those stakeholders. And I think, and I have to say, we believe as founders that without an association, the economics of the sport will remain small and in control of the hands of just a few people. And that will limit the opportunity for women's racing today and in the future. like the most important part of a sport is the players, are the riders. Without the riders, there's no women's cycling, and I think that's why it's important to make your voice heard, and that can only be done. That's only easier if you all stand together. So women's cycling is really in a positive flow. Like it is really improving, but there's still many things that are not well at the moment, not good for the riders. And yeah, I think more or less that's the reason. So to be part of that positive movement, to be an active stakeholder, and to have your voice heard.
Right. What is the Alliance doing, and how are they doing that? That's a big question.
Yeah. So for my background, I was a professional cyclist for 12 years, and I was also part of the athletes commission within the International Cycling Union. And myself as a rider, I had some questions and I have some struggles sometimes, when you have problems with your contract or your team manager or that whatever. And at the same time, being the athlete's representative, I got similar questions from riders. So, I mean, it's clear that there are a lot of things that are not done right, and that the riders have a big ask for help when it comes to legal advice or that kind of things. But to be sure, we've started out in February 2017 with a survey. We sent it out to all the UCI riders, over 400. 50% responded. And already the fact that so many riders responded is a clear sign that they really want and they're really looking for help and someone who helps them with expressing their voice. And maybe coming back to your first question, I think that should maybe be the most important thing. Why now? Because the riders want it. They want someone, some organization to express their voice and to help them. So, yeah.
Let me interrupt for 1 second. So the riders that you sent this to and that you're representing are road or all women cycling in all the disciplines?
No, they're specifically road cyclists.
Okay.
And so they're all part of a UCI women's team.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
And so we started out with a survey. From that survey, we wrote down like the main objectives or goals that the riders ask for, or what came out of the survey. And based on that mission and objective, we made a long-term plan. And that's like in the first year, for sure, we will make sure this association is established and that we have a seat in multiple UCI commissions. We support riders with legal advice, and we have a new standard contract for the members that they can use already when they sign a new contract with their team. And that's because, for example, we saw there are a lot of things written in contracts that shouldn't be in there. And at the same time, almost no rider has a manager, and almost no rider really understands what they sign when they sign a contract with the team. So it's like this small part of education will improve their situation. And then in the coming years, we're working, for example, on a mentorship program, on an insurance package, representation on other organizations like the Professional Cycling Council or the CPA. And I think the most important thing that we were working on is to push for a teams association, and then we can negotiate with the teams association for a joint agreement or like minimum working conditions. And I think that would be really huge. That's our goal, to have something like that established in the second year. And that's a thing, like if we can establish a joint agreement, then you can rapidly improve the working conditions of the riders. That's really some specific things that we can help the riders with.
And with the working conditions, are you mostly talking about salary, or are you talking about like on the job conditions?
Both. So there's no minimum salary at the moment in women's cycling. So if the riders and the teams can negotiate a minimum salary, I think that would be a huge improvement. But at the moment, I think that women's cycling is not. It is not economically. It's not possible for all teams to provide a minimum salary, and also you don't want to kill your sport at the same time. But maybe with the top 10 teams that will be part of the Women's World Tour next year, it's possible. But I think, and that's also something that came out of the survey. It's way more important for the riders to have, for example, professional staff members. So speaking about team managers, sport directors with an education for a sport director, mechanics and soigneurs who are educated as a mechanic or a soigneur. You know, that it's not someone's dad or someone's boyfriend who is fixing your bike or massaging the whole team. So that is something that's very important. And secondly, the equipment, traveling, medical expenses, yeah, those kind of things, insurance, it that is just not a normal thing for all riders, for all teams. And I think to have a more equal, I think it's we shouldn't look too much, for example, to men's cycling, but first try to make women's cycling more equal. So now we have some riders that are very well paid, and like the top riders, they race every weekend against girls who have no salary from the team, who still have a second job, who drive by themselves 500-600 kilometers to a race, or they don't stay in hotels. Yeah, we have to create an equal playing field, and those minimum working conditions are way more important than a minimum salary.
I think it's interesting, though, because, on one hand, I agree with what you said. On the other hand, if you give riders a minimum salary, then they can quit their job, then they can become more fit, then the peloton is deeper and the racing gets better and there's more interest. And I mean, it's like this cascade of what happens just by having a minimum salary for everybody.
Yeah, that's true. But there is a danger, because if you say, okay, you have to provide a minimum salary to a team that doesn't have the budget to provide a minimum salary, they will always create some constructions that the riders have to pay for other things, or they have to pay back their salary, or you get all this dodgy stuff going on the background, and you see that riders, they are so keen to be part of a UCI team that they sign the most shitty contracts.
Right.
And at some point, I feel you almost have to protect riders from themselves, from signing for those kind of teams that definitely don't have the best interest with their riders. I do agree with you that if you set a minimum salary, there is the opportunity for a more equal playing field, but also more equal teams. So some teams will disappear because they can't afford it, but maybe that are the teams that that are actually not, that actually they don't have the level to be a World Tour team.
Right.
In 2019, the plan of the UCI is to introduce a two-tier system, and then you could say, for example, okay, these tier 1 teams, they have to provide a minimum salary. The tier 2 teams, they can be recognized, for example, more as development teams, and they don't have to provide a minimum salary. But I would love to see that they would provide other things, like, for example, professional staff, or the opportunity for education, or those kind of good insurance, those kind of things.
Right. I want to go back to something that you mentioned about, like, how do you save riders from themselves for signing those crappy contracts? Because I think that's a really difficult thing, because, you've put all this effort into training and you want to get on a team, and then, but you're sort of riders who sign those terrible contracts are just perpetuating the bad contracts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really difficult thing. I think education is very important. So they have to know what they really sign for, what they should expect from a team, and what is definitely not right. If it, what other things that are happening at teams. And I think it's also kind of to make them conscious that there is yeah, it's their own choice at the end, but they sort of kill their own sport by keep signing with bad teams and racing for them. And I hope we can change that way of thinking through the Cyclists Alliance, that at least when you speak about it and you can say, hey, this is not normal what's happening in your team, that riders are aware of it and they know, okay, this team is not a good team to sign for. At least, when they can ask me or some of the other board members before they sign with a team, and we can say, okay, you can sign with this team, but in the past few years, this happens and this happened and this happened. So it's probably not a good idea to sign for that team. Then when they would still sign for it at the end because they so badly want a contract, and then it's more or less their own choice. But now there's some kind of culture that when something bad happens in a team, a rider just by the end of the year moves to another team and no one speaks about it. So yeah, then you sort of keep this culture alive because it's something people don't speak about. So I think being open about it and educate and make them aware. And also, I hope this mentorship program can really help, that you connect an experienced rider to a young rider, and the young rider can be taught by the older rider what is it, not only what it takes to be a professional cyclist, but also all the things around, like when it comes to team ethics.
Right. And, I think what's interesting is that you're asking riders to take the leap of having to think of the sport as a whole rather than just their individuality. And I think from the outside perspective, that's what's different about this Cyclists Alliance than what I've seen in the past, in that you and Carmen are done racing, so that you can proceed without fear of retribution.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's for sure it's easier for us now to talk about it. When, like you say, there is no team that will say, hey, Iris, I don't sign you next year because you're a difficult rider because you talk about all this.
Right.
With everyone.
You can be the bad guys.
Yeah, that's and I would love to be the bad guy. I don't mind. And and I also, because we are also speaking with team managers, and there are many team managers who also want to change the situation. So I think we're not a threat to any team or to any race organizer. I think everyone who has the right intention to improve women's cycling, and at the end, if we can change the economics of women's cycling, we will all profit, the riders and the teams, and the race organizers. So yeah, if you have the right intentions, then I think everyone can be happy with what we've been establishing here. And who doesn't, I think, well, maybe then it's better if they leave the sport, because why are you in women's cycling if you're just doing it for, I don't know, your own bank account, or that you love to be in charge over a bunch of women. I don't know what the motives are. Yeah.
What are the barriers that you're facing?
At the moment, I'm actually really surprised that there are not so many barriers. I think the biggest barrier is to really educate people about our plans, and I think our concept is, like you say, it's different than what's been done before. So we really have to educate also the riders, of course, but also the teams on our plans, but also the UCI. As soon as we explain it, most people are like super enthusiastic about it. But yeah, that takes a lot of time. So I think a barrier is that it's something new and it needs some time to that everyone really understands where we want to go. But like the UCI responded quite yeah, maybe I wouldn't say enthusiastic, but yeah, they were very positive about what we were setting up. We were already speaking with some team managers. So yeah, for now I think I don't really see any barriers. Yeah, just some practical stuff.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about the UCI. So you've spoken with them?
Yeah, we had a meeting with Lapartient, the new president of the UCI, in early December. It's a bit difficult. Like the last few years, I was in the athletes commission and also in the road commission, which is a quite important commission in within the UCI when it comes to road cycling. So I've always been working with Brian Cookson, so I knew him, I think, quite well. He was pretty open for the thing we were doing for women's cycling. And now there's a new president, so you need to build on a new relationship.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm actually quite surprised or pleasantly surprised about his reaction. And I think, yeah, we're on the same page that I think David Lapertient sees that in men's cycling, there is not much to gain for him there. If you really want to make a change in your sport within cycling, then you can do that with women's cycling. It's a blank sheet. You can create a whole new sport. You can do everything what's been done wrong with men's cycling. You can do it right now with women's cycling, and that is the opportunity for the UCI. And I think they see that opportunity, and it's to us to help them to achieve that, to make the change, and to push them maybe a little bit harder, so it goes a little bit faster than most things happen at the UCI.
I was going to say, I mean, everything you're saying sounds so optimistic, but I've seen a lot of lethargy, or, Cookson was quoted in the movie Half the Road, like it's a gigantic ship, it's hard to turn. And I just, oh my God, I'm tired of hearing that.
Yeah, well, because women's cycling it's not okay, maybe men's cycling, yeah, it's hard to turn because there are so many stakeholders and there is already so much established. But in women's cycling, it's not. It's just I think it's a very fresh sport, and you can take it every direction, and it's and we want to push it the right direction, and I hope the UCI is part of that and will support, or we support the UCI. It doesn't matter who takes the lead, but yeah, now we're discussing our plans with the UCI, and Tracy Gaudry is an important person in that as well.
But she's no longer one of the vice presidents, right?
Yeah. That's a shame.
Yeah. And there's also, I noticed there's certainly no women in the top 4, and Tracy is the only woman on the 17-person management committee, so that too is a shame.
Yeah, that's really a shame. Yeah, I think the UCI is quite a big ship that's hard to change. It's politics. I'm not a big fan of politics. I just say what I think, and I hope that will. I mean, it's something that's hard to change, and at the end,
it's hard to change. But sorry to interrupt, but I mean, the other thing that I keep wanting to ask is like somebody just needs to make a decision and make it happen.
True.
I'm oversimplifying. I know that, but at a certain point, somebody has just got to make the decision and accept the responsibility for what happens.
That's true, and I think, and what I was saying, that you don't really need the UCI to do that. The UCI is an important stakeholder, but they are, at the end, they're also just a regulator. So if the teams and the riders, for example, can come to an agreement about the working conditions or a minimum salary, you don't need a UCI to do that. Actually, that's totally not up to the UCI.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No. That's not the responsibility of the UCI. you don't need the UCI to create, I don't know, for example, your own league, like what I have been with tennis in the past, or to connect your a league that you create with an online platform or a broadcaster, or to some kind of a new digital media outlet. So yeah, that's yeah, I'm still super positive. I
Yeah,
think.
I'm super encouraged just hearing that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can we go back and talk a little bit about some of the statistics that you learned from the survey? Like, what is the salary range for women road cyclists?
Um, well, the survey we did was between no salary or 40,000 euros a year. But we saw from the survey that half of the peloton is earning less than 10,000 euros a year, and 47% is earning less than 5,000 euros a year. So you can say that actually half of the riders has no salary.
Right.
And then there's like a small percentage that earns over 20,000 euros a year, I think 17%. And that's like the minimum income in the Netherlands, for example.
Okay. And what do the top team leaders make, and what do the top domestiques make?
Well, I think the top leaders make around, yeah, between 40,000 and, yeah, I think there are just one or two or three girls maybe that make 100,000 a year.
Got it.
And then the top domestiques make around 20,000. You can check it all on the website.
Okay, will do. I guess I was interested in, like the numbers of people who are actually making a living.
Yeah. Yeah, well, then if you would say 20,000 is a living, then I have to calculate fast, and it's like 35% of the peloton, so that's like 100 riders maybe. Yeah.
Okay. So it sounded like you said that the peloton has been reacting really well to what you guys are doing. Has there been any resistance from any of the riders? And what has that resistance been?
No, there's not been any resistance actually that I've heard of. Just a few said that they're like, hey, because they have to pay a membership fee of 50 euros a year. That's maybe for some riders a reason not to sign up yet, or not yet, maybe hopefully later. That's the only thing, but in general, they're all really positive about it. Yeah.
One of the articles that I read on your website talked about the difference between men's sports and women's sports, and how women, take in sports or consume sports. And I was wondering if you personally thought about how women do consume sports or watch sports or relate to sports and the athletes. I often wonder if women are interested in sports in a way that's different from men, or if they are consuming sports in a way that's different from men because that's the kind of stories that they've been given.
No, I think they're really consuming sports in a different way. For example, when you talk about cycling, when I ride a lot with male cyclists. Of course, I've always trained a lot with guys. I always feel like the men are more interested in the winners, like in the heroes, and it doesn't matter if it's a really boring guy without any personality. If you want to race, well, I'm always more interested in someone's personality, or someone's what kind of person it is. Maybe women also search more for that background of an athlete.
Right.
They're maybe less interested in the winner. What do you think?
I personally am not interested in sort of the blow by blow, what happened in a race. I get very bored.
Yeah.
It's too sort of egocentric to me. However, on the other hand, I never liked the NBC Olympic coverage from many years ago. They had those up close and personal interviews, and they were so far removed from the sport that it was no longer interesting to me either. So I think there's a balance somewhere.
Yeah, of course there is a balance, but I think as a woman, more you try more to identify maybe with an athlete, and it's easier to identify with someone who has, for example, a mutual hobby or background, or and it doesn't necessarily have to be the winner. I mean, I love Serena Williams because I'm not a fan of tennis, but I like her because I think she's cool and she's like very outspoken. Something I really like, and she has her own fashion brand, something I really like. So then I think, yeah, it's a pretty cool chick. So she became a mom while also try to still be a pro player. So yeah, I think that's something that inspires me. That more than I don't know how many Grand Slams she won.
Well, it's certainly an opportunity for sponsors, that you don't have to worry about the people that you're interested in winning. They can just be interesting, really good, motivational people.
Yeah, that I think so too, and some brands already use that quite smart, and I think that's an opportunity for the future to use women's cycling to get those personalities and those stories out there. And I mean, women are also very easy to reach, to get in contact with. I was part of a cycling team that had a men's team and a women's team. And I think quite soon they saw that it was way better to invite the women's to a sponsor meeting than the men, because the women were much more engaging with the sponsors, with the guests. They easier share their knowledge or experience, or they were just maybe more social. I don't know, but that is something that you can give back as an athlete, is maybe much more valuable for a sponsor than just those victories.
Do you think that will change with increased money in the sport? Like, will women all of a sudden be aloof because they're making more money?
No, I don't think so.
I
No,
don't think
because
so either. But
no, that's not. No, I've always enjoyed it as well.
right.
So,
Do you have long-term goals that we haven't discussed already?
yeah, I think a long-term goal is that what I think is very important is to reach those new audience and to establish a true women's league, a racing league. The best would be to have full sustainability as a global women's sporting union for ourselves, for the Cyclists Alliance, with multiple sources and with broadcasting agreements, with good relationships with all the stakeholders, and to really influence the sport. And that's a goal for the Cyclists Alliance. For women's cycling, the goal is, yeah, the same actually, to make it a sustainable economic, sustainable sport, and to be more global, to reach out to new fans, to have all the riders, to be a truly professional, not that they only feel they're a professional, but they are really a professional. Um, and I also really hope that we can establish this mentorship program with a chance for education, for after career support, with maybe a pension plan that would be, yeah, very important for. This was something that came out of the survey as well. The riders are very concerned about their future. So yeah, this after career support is a big thing we're working on, and hopefully we can establish that in the future or near future even better.
Yeah, that's so smart to think about what's next.
Yeah, well, but there are very smart riders, so that it's a really smart peloton. If you look to the numbers of how many riders have a higher education at the moment, that's really amazing. So yeah, it's a smart bunch of women, and they are concerned about their future. So it's great if we can help them
Right.
with that.
What are your goals for media coverage of women's cycling?
Um, so we're now speaking with possible or looking for different opportunities, and I think that comes really together with a more exciting women's calendar. And I think the goal is to have a more modern format for delivery over free-to-air TV and digital on-demand platforms, and to create that fan experience where we just talked about, that you can build a connection through those personal stories. But yeah, to get the racing out there and to make new fans and to get the riders known. So yeah, coming back to the goal, how to reach that is create the race series, or at least that's something we hopefully can do together with the UCI, that you really create a narrative, a story for a series of racing. I mean, we have a series of racing, we have the World Tour, but you can tell the story better and bring that to a more modern format of media delivery. I think we can be an important organization to push for that. We have quite a few connections within our association at the moment, and we are already working on that. So
you're working directly with media companies?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to. It's no scoop or something. There's nothing arranged yet. But we're working with our business plan with some advisors on different possibilities. So
cool.
I think that's a realistic goal.
So who are your heroes? You mentioned tennis. Is Billie Jean a hero?
She's definitely a good role model, I would say. Who's my hero? I get inspiration from so many things, like what happened last summer in the United States with the hockey players. I think that's the kind of things that are really inspiring. When I just saw this evening the speech of Oprah Winfrey, I think, there's just so many things going on in women's sports, or when it comes to equality, that are all things that inspire me. I can mention one hero, but I think maybe the women's peloton is my hero. There are so many great riders in there who I think deserve, a good treatment and a good career, and especially they deserve a future with their sport. I think that's the best motivation.
Yeah. Are you still riding yourself?
Well, it's a little bit busy at the moment. But, I'm still riding once in a while. Yeah.
What's your favorite breakfast?
My favorite? I'm really boring with breakfast. For the last 20 years, I have the same breakfast. So it's just fruit and yogurt and muesli. I guess that's my favorite.
I've decided that most athletes eat some version of oatmeal every day.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. when I put some mango in, then it's a real treat. So.
And what about favorite food? Do you have a favorite food?
Oh yeah. Well, Dutch food, of course. Well, not of course, but
What's Dutch food?
What's Dutch food is difficult to explain, but it's mostly potatoes and vegetables all mashed together, like a big vegetable mashed up plate. It doesn't really look very attractive, but it tastes very, very good. And I love to eat red beets.
Oh, I like red beets.
Yeah.
Well, we're wrapping things up. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
Well, first of all, it's important to say that it's not just me, this Cyclists Alliance, but it's also Carmen Small and Gracie Alvin, and we have a great group of advisors, for example, with Marianne Vos, and some, many advisors who have their own specialty. Were connected already to some bigger player unions like the Uni World Players Association and EU Athletes, who are very helpful. And so it's not just me, not at all. And what else I want to add? No, I think I'm happy with all the attention we get, and it's great you tell me all those questions, and anyone who has ideas or want to support somehow or wants to make some remarks or has more questions, they're always welcome to contact us. And that's it. I think, like Carmen said, this can be and I really believe so. This can be a changing point for the sport of women's cycling, and hopefully we will become one of the biggest sport in women's sports. That would be great, and I think also realistic.
All right, that was Iris from early January of this year. Our second call was just a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about everything that has happened in the last 6 months. If you would like to contact Iris, head to her episode page on hearhersports.com for links to reach her. Thank you so much, Iris, for coming back. It's been a while, actually, when I was looking at the Skype. It's been 6 months since our first conversation. So
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So what's been happening with the Alliance since we last spoke?
Quite a lot, I think. So if it's 6 months ago that we spoke, that's when we just started officially. And yeah, I think the last 6 months were quite. I have to say it's been really great. It's been overwhelming, but it's also worrying because there's definitely a need for a union that helps the riders. So, I mean, we all knew there was an ask for it, but the fact that there is quite a lot of riders reaching out to us is also, it's not always a good thing because of the situation the riders are in. So, but yeah, I think in the 6 months we made quite a lot of progress, but it's also been a learning experience because now since we've really started, we've also noticed all the work it involves, and there were quite some things that came up that we didn't really knew before.
Like what?
I mean, I guess the complications of cases sometimes, but also I think what surprises me the most is that it's still so hard for riders to. They come to us with a complaint or a question or for help, and then we provide an answer, or we say, okay, you can do this or that, or we can help you to file a complaint at the UCI, or we can write an email to your team manager. But always when it comes to that kind of point, there are many riders who hold back and who say okay, no thanks. We don't want to proceed because they're afraid for results of that kind of action. So that's I think this is a process that's we need to have some successes to show the riders that they're in a more stronger position than they think, and that will give them some confidence. But up until now there are many riders who still think that all the power is with the teams or with the UCI or, whoever. Yeah.
That reminds me of a situation that I was in. This is many, many years ago. But I got criticized by the team, and I would say that I was not supported by the other riders. So I understand riders' concern.
Yeah.
It's like the women's U.S. hockey team. What made them successful was that every single woman hockey player in the country banded together.
True. That's exactly it. So we did help some riders from teams, but they really need to realize that, okay, if we do this all together, then we're gonna achieve something. But at the end, we cannot force a rider to do something, to file a complaint or to go to arbitrage. We can just support them and explain them what their rights are and help them, and even start a process for them. But it is the rider who, they have to agree on it, and it's apparently still a very scary thing for riders to do, and yes, that is understandable. But I really hope this will change in the future, because in this way, then at the end nothing will change if we
Right. Another concern that I would have is that it would sort of derail your season. Like, let's say you have a complaint, you file it, and then all of a sudden your entire season is focused on this complaint and the arbitrage. So is that an actual concern?
Yeah, that is a concern, because quite a big part of the complaints that come in have to do with team ethics. So it's intimidation or mental abuse, or riders are being forced to do stuff that they don't feel comfortable with. And in this kind of case, when the rider should go to the ethics commission at the UCI, but you can do that anonymously. So if you file a complaint, for example, against your sport director or your team manager, the complaint will be immediately sent forward to that person, so he or she can have an answer on that. And I mean, if you do that in April or March, every rider will know that if they have the courage to go to the ethics commission, for sure they won't be racing anymore the rest of the season.
Right.
Because and at the end, every rider just wants to race. We had 2 cases that the rider says, okay, I don't care anymore if I'm being put out of the team or if I don't race anymore. My life's so miserable right now. I take the gamble. But for most riders, it's still more important to race than to make a complaint. So yeah, and we really pushed and asked the UCI multiple times, like, please, can you make an anonymous, an ombudsman, or I don't know what the word is in English, but like a person you can go to and you can complain, and your complaint stays anonymous. But yeah,
right.
Until now, that's not something that they're talking about it, but they haven't installed something like that yet. So I think this ethics commission thing is okay. It's good, it's there, but I don't think it really works for a lot of riders.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm encouraged that it certainly sounds like the riders are taking advantages of your services.
Yeah, I mean, I think until now we helped up around 8 to 10 riders, and a few times this rider presented like also her teammates. So I think we've helped quite a lot of riders, and very often it's quite simple. Like, for example, there's a rider that doesn't get paid anymore because she's been sick for 1 or 2 months, and her team manager says, okay, we don't pay you anymore because you're sick. And she comes to us and she say, hey, is that actually possible? And then, of course, we say, no, that's not possible. So we show the UCI regulations and we look at her contract. And, even in some contracts, it's written that you don't get paid anymore if you're sick. But in most contracts, it isn't. And then, just showing that to her team manager makes that she gets paid again, because the team managers, they realize like, oh, okay, probably she has some kind of support or she knows the rules, so we cannot fool around with this kind of stuff. I think,
That's excellent.
most of the times you don't have to go to arbitrage or to get something done. It's just, showing the riders what her rights are and helping her to show that to her team manager. And this is, has been done already with a rider who would be fired for no reason or not getting paid, or we had some small success. And I think this is definitely important. Also, riders that got asked to sign contracts about equipment that were undermining their actual contract, and they asked us, hey, should we sign this? And we said, no, don't sign it because it undermines your actual contract. And no one signed it, and at the end, they could still use the equipment. So
right. Well, the thing that I like about that is that it's also showing the team management that, the riders are now going to be assertive.
Exactly. It's a small thing, and this is something we've said from the beginning. It's a small thing that can make a big difference, to give the riders the education of what their rights are and that they have support.
Yeah. I interrupted you as you were telling me, what's been happening since we last spoke. Is there anything else?
Yeah. So when coming to these ethical conditions, safety within teams, but also within races, but especially within teams, has been one of the biggest concerns from the riders that came out of the survey that we did in 2017. And this has been one of our main objectives.
What do you mean by safety?
So that the working environment is a safe place, so that you know that the team staffing is well educated for the job they do, and if they breach the ethics code, for example, that they can also be prosecuted, or I don't know what's the word. At least they can be held accountable for their deeds. And this is something, like I said before, we asked the UCI to install some kind of ombudsman. They haven't done that, but at least they just presented a new code of conduct. It's going to be, they will enforce that in 2019, and it has to be signed by all employees of a UCI women's team. And it's a code of conduct that states very clearly, like, okay, this is what I can and can do working for a team. I think there's two things. It will raise awareness of harassment that some riders still face, but it will also give the rider even more support and confidence that whenever someone in your team staff does not respect this code of conduct, it will result into sanctions. So I think, it's just a little bit of that extra support of, what can be done in a professional sporting environment. Mm-hmm. Let's say it like that. Mm-hmm. Another thing is insurance, which was also a big priority for riders. There are regulations now on which insurance a team should provide and which ones the rider herself should provide, but it's very unclear. And we did have already quite a lot of questions about it this year. And when we talk with national federations, it's a little bit like a gray area. And that results into that some riders are underinsured.
This is health insurance, right?
Yeah, this is health insurance, yeah. So the regulations will be stronger and also more clear on that for next year. And we also provide insurance package right now already for the riders, together with an insurance company in Germany that provides already insurance packages for a lot of bigger teams.
Wow, that's great. That's a great offering.
So that the riders can buy that package for a reduced price because they're a member of us. Yeah, at the end we want that every rider has the full support from her team, but right now I think this is the second best option. At least, the most important is, I think, for riders also to understand that, it's a pretty dangerous sport. So yeah, your insurance is super important.
I would think that just making it easy for them to get insurance at a reduced price would be really helpful.
And also it's important that they get an insurance that's very focused on the rider as a professional cyclist. I think it,
of course,
it provides a bit more
crash insurance.
Yes, for example, dental insurance maybe. Yeah. So yeah, that's two things. And something else that what we've done in the last few months is that we launched the mentorship program. We've talked about that last winter. That's been our plan from the beginning, and I think 2 months ago we've started it. And the mentorship program is we match an experienced rider with a young rider from different countries and different teams. And we had sort of like, let's say, a soft launch. But we've already got, I think, 6 or 7 couples right now. We're still working on an online platform that we can provide also some extra things for the mentors and the mentees. But for now, we match them. And this has been done like on a questionnaire, and to see like where are their interests and what kind of types of riders are they, and they just communicate with each other by WhatsApp or calling or in speaking with each other in the race, and we help the mentors or the mentees, but mostly the mentors, if they have any question about the mentoring or the coaching. And we get really good feedback on that. So that's definitely what we want to keep building on. And I think it's also, this is actually a very simple thing. It's just connecting people, but it's very valuable for the riders. And also the mentors, they really enjoy sharing their experiences. So,
sure.
Yeah.
I would think it would also help sort of, more open conversation about the issues that you're talking about and wanting to work on so that there's just greater communication.
Yeah, it's true. And what I personally very often experienced as a writer, it's that it's sometimes difficult to talk about issues like salary or even the way your team manager behaves in the team. Or sometimes you're in a team and you think yourself like, is this normal? And all your teammates pretend like it's normal, so you
Right.
don't really want to ask it, especially when you're young. And then it's easier to, I always had that kind of person myself when I was a writer, sort of like a mentor, and that really helped me. That I could just call her sometimes, and I said like, hey, is this normal? Even about your own teammates, it's something you can prepare for being a pro cyclist. So
Right.
when you're 18 or 19 and you step into this weird world of pro athletes and cycling races and everything, it's yeah.
Cool. That's great. So what are your days like? You mentioned that it's been overwhelming. So my first thought was like, how many hours are you working and what are you doing every day?
Yeah, well, I still have, I should say, 3 normal jobs.
No, you
so,
don't. Oh no.
so this is just for Gracie, Carmen, and me. This is all like voluntary work we do,
How about
and
that?
it's most of the times we do it in evenings or early mornings, or a lot of stuff I just squeeze in between my other work. I'm self-employed, so I'm pretty flexible in my times. But yeah, it's quite. I think I spend 10 to 15 hours a week working for the Cyclists Alliance. So it's quite a lot next to all the normal work. But
You're a designer,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
I
Yeah.
remember that from last time. So what have the biggest struggles been for you in the last 6 months or year even?
Well, actually, the finance, or let's say the resources, that's quite of a struggle because we just do everything now from the membership fees, and yeah, that's not a lot. So um, yeah, we actually don't have any resources. So we try to make not too much cost, but of course sometimes I have to fly somewhere for meetings, or yeah, you just have like administrational costs, or the website. And actually, it would be good if we have some resources to hire also some expertise, like when it comes to legal help. We're really lucky that we've got a lot of offers for help as well. So we do have a lawyer that helps us for free. We have a webmaster who helps us for free. Until now, almost all people work for us voluntary, so that's really great. But of course, to even provide more for this mentorship program, it would be good if we have some resources. But so if there's any company that wants to get involved, they're really welcome.
Yeah. I know that all your services are for the current UCI riders, but like I would like to join. Do you have a membership for non-current riders?
Yeah, so you can make a donation, but at the moment we've got that question quite a lot recently. So we're working on an affiliate membership, so that you can join as a member as well if you aren't a rider. So yeah, that's definitely, but that's something we learn while doing it, and it's great that people give us that kind of feedback.
Well, it's sort of like what we've talked about before is that you do want to promote the sport. And this is
True.
certainly one way that I can do I can do
Yeah.
that without being
Yeah.
a writer. And I think this
Yeah.
is such an important project that you're working on.
Yeah. 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 Well, very soon you can become an affiliate member.
Excellent.
And another struggle is, I think, reaching out to the riders. Actually, on this moment we have 90 members, which isn't so bad, but it could be a bit more. I mean, our aim was like around 150 riders by the end of the season. So we did notice that you have like the early adapters, the riders who really share our vision and wants to join, and that's been a lot of the like top riders. And there are the riders that really need our help that joined, and then there's quite a big group of riders that are just a little bit, I wouldn't say lazy, but when we ask them, we say, "Hey, why didn't you sign up yet?" They were like, "Oh yeah, I still need to do it, but Yeah, I forget it every time. So,
Right.
we really have to go to the riders and explain them and say, okay, sign up, and then they'll do it, because it's not that they don't want to sign up, but it's just that they're a bit slow. And then it's also a little bit, I think, a language barrier. So especially Italian and Spanish riders, we communicate everything in English, and for the Dutch and the Germans it's pretty easy, but for Italian and Spanish it's a bit harder. So we do try to translate sometimes in multiple languages, but if you have to translate all your newsletters into 5 languages, this takes a lot of time as well. So
Right.
yeah. One other thing that we just decided is to open up also for mountain bike, CX, BMX, and track. So we want to help. And this was another question that we learned while doing it from riders from different disciplines. Like they just asked, like, hey, can we join as well? And first we thought like, oh, we've got our hands full just on road cycling. But we also learned that there are so many, for example, we provide an improved standard contract for our members. And this is something that's useful for every kind of rider. If you're a mountain biker or a track rider, doesn't matter. And the same is for the insurance or for the mentorship program. So we're working on a sort of a separate commission now with Helen Wyman, for example. Is a CX rider, is helping us with that. So yeah, hopefully very soon we can make that a bit more official. Yeah, we can sign up also members from other disciplines.
That'd be great. Adds to the pot.
Yeah. No, I think in general it's I think it's just a very positive project, and we do get a lot of great responses, and I just still feel like there's so much potential in women's cycling, and we really try to change our sport in a positive way and make the riders start to realize they're the most important part of their sport. And I think that's the most important, that we women, we can be a little bit, I think, we put ourselves a bit too much on the background. If that's an English expression, but do you know what I mean?
It sure is.
Yeah.
Yes, I do know what you mean. Yes, speak up, have a voice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you again so much for agreeing to this follow-up call, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Ciao.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks to you for listening. Tell your friends about the podcast. Hear Her Sports was started to increase media coverage of female athletes and women in sport. 44% of athletes are women, yet only 4% of media coverage is about women. That's not a number, it's a rounding error. Spread the word about fantastic, strong women speaking up and doing amazing things. Please subscribe on iTunes and encourage people you know to do the same. It really does help more people to find the podcast. Thank you to Agnes Studio, the blog She Rides Her Bike, Gold Mines, and Leap Strategies for super support and partnership. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Bye-bye.